There was a man who lived simply. Each morning he woke up before the town stirred. He walked through the same streets, past the same doors with a quiet purpose. No cameras followed him. No one wrote down his steps. He didn't need to impress anyone. His goal wasn't to be remembered. It was to serve, not because he had to, but because he had learned over time that true strength doesn't need to prove itself. He had discovered that the most powerful acts are often the ones done without a single word. He helped people quietly, fixed a broken fence here, shoveled a neighbor's snow there. If someone had no food, somehow a basket appeared at their door. If someone was lonely, they'd find him sitting with them, not talking, just being there. He showed up not for glory, but because showing up mattered more to him than being thanked. Over the years, these small things piled up like bricks in a foundation. He built something real, something invisible, something that held people together, and he did it silently. Children watched him, not because he demanded attention, but because he was consistent. He always waved, always listened, always remembered their names, and in a world full of noise and distraction, they saw something in him that no one else gave them: stillness. He gave people the feeling that someone cared enough to notice even if no one else did, and that shaped how they grew up. He never raised his voice, but he shaped lives more than 1,000 shouted lessons ever could. People often think legacy is built on achievements, records, titles, or wealth. But real legacy is made of moments, not the kind that make headlines, but the kind that make someone pause and breathe deeper. The kind of moment where someone says, "I don't know why, but I felt peace when he was around." That's legacy, and you don't need a stage for that. You need a heart that's willing to stay consistent when no one sees you. You need a soul that values people over praise. You need the patience to sow seeds, knowing you may never live to see the tree. When he passed away, no monuments were built, but something far more valuable was left behind. A trail of kindness, a memory of steadiness, a story people from one heart to another quietly. They didn't gather to speak of his accomplishments. They gathered to speak of how he made them feel. Because in the end, people don't remember your resume. They remember your presence, your tone, your attention, your warmth. And it all begins in the silence, in the uncelebrated moments, in the acts of love done with no camera on, no hand outstretched for recognition. That's where legacy grows, in the places where only God sees, where no one applauds, where the only echo is the heartbeat of someone who chose to live well, even when no one noticed. Kindness doesn't need recognition to be powerful. This kind of kindness is not driven by what others think or say. In a world obsessed with attention, where every gesture is often captured, shared, and praised online, there remains a deeper, quieter form of kindness, the kind that lives in secret, that doesn't need a spotlight to have meaning. It doesn't wear a mask of virtue for approval. It exists because it's real. It flows from a heart that has known pain, felt loneliness, experienced and has decided that others should never walk through the same without a hand to hold or a voice to comfort. There are people who walk among us daily, who give without telling, who offer without asking, and who heal without announcing. They might be the person who pays for someone else's groceries in silence. They might be the one who leaves food at a neighbor's doorstep with no note attached. They might be the teacher who stays late after class, not for overtime, but because a struggling student finally opened up. These people don't need to be thanked. They aren't driven by recognition. What moves them is something much deeper. Love that doesn't keep score. The old man in the story never kept a record of the good he did. He didn't remind others of the times he helped. He didn't walk around with a sense of superiority or entitlement. He simply did what needed to be done day after day, moment after moment, because kindness was his natural language. He understood something that many forget, that the purest form of giving is when the giver fades and only the gift remains. When a person disappears behind their act, and what is remembered is not their name, but the comfort they gave, the warmth they spread, the burden they lifted. Some people will spend their whole lives doing good, and almost no one will know. Their names won't appear in books or on plaques. They won't be trending, but their influence will stretch beyond what can be seen. A kind word given at the right time can save someone from despair. A small act of mercy can stop a storm raging in someone's heart. A meal, a smile, a shared moment. These things may seem small to the world, but they are the building blocks of healing for those who receive them. This kind of kindness doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It sees the need and moves quietly and quickly. It doesn't stop to ask who deserves it. It doesn't hesitate because no one is watching. It is driven by conviction, not convenience. And in the process, it shapes hearts. It opens doors inside people that had long been locked. It reminds them they matter, not because of what they do, but because they exist. That realization alone can change a life. We underestimate the ripple effect of one simple, unrecognized act of kindness. A smile shared with a stranger may inspire them to speak gently to someone else. A silent gift may renew someone's hope. A listening ear may be the reason someone chooses to keep going. These aren't small things. They're sacred. They are seeds planted in invisible soil. And just because the world doesn't cheer when they happen, doesn't mean they don't grow. Some of the strongest roots grow in total darkness and silence away from applause. The power of kindness is not in how loud it is, but in how deeply it touches. It transforms hearts without ever demanding attention. It enters wounds without making a sound. And it reminds us that there is still beauty in a world that too often rewards noise over substance. True kindness is not for show, it is for healing. It is for love. It is for one life can quietly shift an entire community. This isn't something that is always visible at first, because we often look for influence in the wrong places. We search for leaders who speak the loudest, for figures who stand tall in crowds, for voices that echo across stages. But real change, the kind that seeps into the soul of a town, the kind that outlives a man's name, often begins with a single life lived faithfully in silence. A life that shows up consistently with open hands and a patient heart. A life that doesn't wait for permission to care. A life that becomes a thread stitching people together without needing to be noticed. It doesn't take a title to shape a place. Sometimes all it takes is someone who cares enough to keep showing up. Someone who takes time to listen when others are too busy. Someone who remembers birthdays when others forget. Someone who walks the same path every day, not because it's efficient, but because they know someone along the way needs to see a familiar face. This one life can become a kind of anchor, quiet and unshakable, holding people together, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. In every community there are people who do this. They don't wear uniforms or stand behind pulpits. They don't lead organizations or hold microphones. But their presence brings calm, their consistency brings trust. They teach others how to live without ever opening a book. Their character becomes a compass. They don't preach values, they live them. And those around them slowly begin to change without even realizing it. They start checking in on neighbors. They begin to look up when someone walks by. They start to understand that strength isn't always loud, and compassion doesn't always ask to be seen. The old man was never officially chosen to be anything. No one gave him a role. No one gave him a platform, yet people found themselves drawn to him. He didn't give advice, but people felt understood. He didn't offer solutions, but his silence made room for healing. The children learned that kindness was something you lived, not something you talked about. The elders respected him because he reminded them of a time community meant something deeper. The young adults, often lost in their own distractions, found peace in his presence. And the strangers who passed through never forgot the way he made them feel welcomed without a single word. Communities are built not just by structures and systems, but by the spirit of the people within them. When even one person chooses to carry that spirit with integrity and love, it spreads. It becomes contagious. It awakens something that had long been asleep in others. That one life becomes a mirror reflecting the goodness others had forgotten they were capable of. It starts slow, a favor done quietly, a problem solved without credit, a habit of kindness practiced daily. And before long, the people who once hurried past begin to pause. They begin to notice. They begin to follow the example that was never meant to lead, but ended up leading by nature. In the absence of that one person, everything feels a little different. Not because they demanded attention, but because their presence had become a rhythm. Their care had become a comfort. Their living had become a kind of unspoken standard. And when they're gone, people start filling the space they left behind. Not out of obligation, but because they were inspired. Inspired by a life that was simple, humble, and deeply consistent. A life that asked for nothing and gave everything it could, little by little every day, until an entire community became better, simply because one person chose to live with love.